Act of 1998, specific relief.
I'll second.
Motion to second. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mrs. Cookabug?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
And Mr. Terman?
Yes.
All right, that is passed unanimously. Thank you, 10B. Mr. Chair, your next item is 10C, E911 road name request, Clementine Lane. That is an action item. You will see in your packet, I think it's actually the last formal item in your packet, a memo from Alicia K. Bosniak, who is, of course, our building official secretary and E911 data technician, that the Floyd County Emergency Management Department would like to submit a request for the naming of a shared drive consisting of 3 or more dwellings located along tax map numbers, and the ones listed there. All property owners along the shared drive have submitted signed road name request forms in agreement upon the proposed name of Clementine Lane. Therefore, the Floyd County Emergency Management Department would like to ask that the Floyd County Board of Supervisors review the proposed road name request and come to a decision on the naming of the above-mentioned so-called shared drive. And of course, you see attached all of those letters and
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
If I can hang in there, about to give out. Now this drive actually starts in the town limits, then goes outside of the town limits and comes back into it. And we're going to be naming the county portion of this. Has the town agreed, or has it been brought to the town's attention, or how does that work on roads that go in and out like that?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Booth, you can't see us, but Cindy and I are looking at each other and not entirely certain. So,
I don't remember another road name request that has done this.
Unless I'm looking at the map incorrectly, it actually starts within the town limits, then it goes outside of the town limits into the county, and then the tail end of it is back in the town. So are we agreeing to name what's in the county, and then the town has to agree for the other, or how does that work in our 911 system?
Could we possibly vote to approve the name contingent on the town approving their portion of the same name, and then that may solve the problem? Send it to them.
Something like that's what I was thinking. I just wondered if the town had been consulted, or if anybody knew.
Because if the town then decided they did not want to name it that, then we could go back to the drawing board rather than resending our motion. I don't know if would that work?
I see no problem with operating that way.
I think it would only be polite to at least say, yeah. I mean, we do have the support of the people there, but one of the houses is in the town as well, so looks like.
I would submit that motion that under Lauren's condition that we approve the contingent upon the town agreeing to name their portions the same, whenever it's appropriate.
Go ahead. I'll take that.
I'll second it. Can we, because it starts in the town, can we require them to spend money on the sign? I'll second it.
I suggest he appoint you to the committee that suggests that to them.
Motion to second.
all right. So a motion by Mr. Booth, seconded by Mr. Yoder. So Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Cookabug.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Turner.
Yes.
All right, that is
You only vote
unanimous. The next action item we have is a request. This kind of revisits something that you all have taken up in various stages, I gather, for some time. This is approval to go to bid for the radio system project. Of course, this has been something you all have been working on long before I got here. And the radio system, as you recall, has a projected cost of $4.83 million as our estimate. And that funding was included in the funding package that you recently approved. But now, and you approved us to have someone who is an expert develop the request. And so we have done that. And would now like your approval for us to go forward with the bid process. So this is not accepting a bid, this is just authorizing us as staff to move forward with the bid process for the radio system.
I'm assuming there hasn't been any changes in the projection, in the equipment and everything that we had looked at before. It's the same. Y'all haven't met and changed anything. Everything's pretty much the same as what we looked at a few months ago.
It's still based off of the radio study and recommendation.
This study, right?
So it's the recommendation of the equipment committee. Let's move forward. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
No, I was just making sure of that.
Floor is open for motion.
Did you want to because you're on that committee, or probably not?
Yeah, I would probably feel more comfortable not.
Okay. I move that we go forward with the bid process on the radio system that we had previously done the study for.
I'll second.
Second. No.
Motion is second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, can you clarify who was the second there for the record?
I put Jerry.
I thought
Okay.
Jerry Beater, but I don't know.
I
Okay,
thought Jerry beat her.
all right, we'll.
Long distance, and didn't get here in time.
Get the vote on.
It just shows citizens is the fastest internet.
Mr. Chair, would you let me go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Kukovic,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
All right, that is approved, and we'll let Kevin know to move forward with that as soon as possible. And just as an added piece of information, we've also asked Steve Durbin and their office to go over our bid one more time just to make sure it meets all of the important standards, because this is a pretty sizable investment for us, as you all know.
We'll dot the i's and cross the t's.
Sure, the last thing that we currently have on the agenda, from the staff at least, is the county administrator's report from me. And there were several items I just wanted to update you on. The first one there is, of course, the American Relief Plan update. As you all know, Floyd County qualifies for $3.1 million of the rescue funding. To date, we have received exactly half of that funding, which has been deposited in our bank account. And so, as you recall in previous meetings, you had requested that I put together a draft of a grant program that the various entities in the county, including our own departments. So if our departments wanted to put something in, they would also have to put something in, just as other groups of citizens or nonprofits would. And so what I have something for you all to look at today and comment on is what that draft looks like, and wanted to let you know a little bit about this, and then also a little bit more of what we've learned about the funding, and maybe make some suggestions for you all to consider. I will hand these out to those of you who are present, and I and I, as the meeting was starting, I also put these in an email, to Ms. Cookenbook and to Mr. Booth, and the rest of you have the same email as well.
Linda, Dr. Millsap, you had sent this prior to tonight's meeting as well. That is the same one, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure everybody saw it tonight as well. So yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
I went back to the original, just as long as the newer one didn't change.
I don't think so. I did add some things, but I think I did that after I sent it to you all. And I will, to Ms. Cookenbook's point, let you know that I drafted this initially, and then also asked several members of the what I would consider our leadership team here to add some comments. And so Cindy and Ladina in particular added several things that were really, really helpful for this. And so you'll see, of course, the first paragraph talks about what is the purpose of the grant program, and is to allow our governmental entities, area authorities, local businesses, and nonprofits the ability to compete for use of the funds allotted to the county. It says final decision on the use of these funds will be made by the Floyd County Board of Supervisors. The decisions will reflect state and federal requirements placed on these funds, as well as the priority of local needs. In terms of areas for funding, of course, that is not up to the Board of Supervisors. That is driven by the federal regulations and federal law. And so there are four main categories that the funding can be used for potentially. One is responding to public health needs and economic damage from the pandemic. And this language is somewhat similar to the language that was in the previous CARES bill about funding COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health care, and certain public health and safety staff, and respond to economic harms to workers, families, small businesses, and nonprofits or impacted industries, and rehiring of public sector workers. Area number 2 is provide premium, i.e. hazard pay for essential workers, public employees. And 3, replacing lost revenue. That's something potentially that only the county could apply for. And then 4, investing in necessary water and broadband infrastructure. And specifically, under the last item, it says make necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, invest in wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and provide unserved or underserved locations with new or expanded broadband access. And all of that language either comes primarily from U.S. Treasury or from the National Association of Counties and some of the responses they've gotten from their queries. And you'll see it's in bold. It is anticipated that the Board of Supervisors will only accept outside proposals that fall into categories 1 and 4. Proposals should all be for work in Floyd County. So we wanted to make sure that was the case. The next section is application to received, including responsive answers to all the questions below by close of business on XXX. And we'll go back and give you some thoughts, our thoughts on that. Submissions can be provided in written or electronic form. County staff will review the request, make recommendations on eligibility, and provide all submitted applications to the Floyd County Board of Supervisors. And then the board, you all would schedule a public hearing to review those applications and hear from applications and the public. We do have a requirement in here, selected for funding. Applicants must sign an agreement with the county covering the parameters and requirements related to the project, including adherence to all state and federal laws and regulations. And the federal law requires that all costs must be incurred by November 1, 2024. There are some other requirements in here about pre-existing limitations in federal statutes and regulations, and of course our necessary discrimination language. Application questions. So what you see there are a total of 15 questions that we would potentially ask folks to be able to respond to. And so it's not necessarily a form, but it's answer all of these questions in 8 to 10 pages maximum, in whatever way you would like to. So name of organization applying, primary contacts, the type of organization, executive summary of the request, which of those areas of funding do you best describe for your project, and explain how you see your organization or project qualifying for that category. Project description, project budget, describe your organization and how you are best suited to carry out the project. Please indicate the population you will serve. Please be sure to specify how that population was negatively impacted by COVID-19. This could include the economic or public health impact, and I would note that that one's in there particularly because there's a requirement in the federal law that we be able to show how it specifically relates to that negative impact. Provide a timeline, and you all had requested that the organization receive funding from the county under CARES Act, and if so, what funding did you receive, what outcomes did you produce? Is your organization willing to sign a binding agreement with the county covering the parameters that I mentioned above? And please let us know anything else you believe is important for the Board of Supervisors to know about your proposal. And then, of course, attaching your 501c3 documentation if appropriate, recent annual audit, any of those kind of things. The answers to these questions, that should say 1 through 15, not 13. Excluding the budget should not exceed 8 to 10 pages. And then we included some draft selection criteria. And this was a good suggestion from Cindy because I think it helps people understand a little bit more maybe where they should focus. So again, that's the description of project and how it directly ties to the authorized use of funds. Evidence the organization has demonstrated an ability and plan to complete the project properly and in a timely manner, so that the evidence that you thought through it, you have a plan, you know what you're going to do. Evidence that the targeted population was negatively impacted by COVID and how it will serve that population, and description of project outcomes and how those outcomes will be measured. We also included some links to the NACO page, that National Association of Counties, and that gives some very specific FAQs that relate to the legislation. So if folks are interested in a particular sub-area and want to know if it qualifies, they can refer to that. I would also note that if you go to those resources, you will find that if we had qualifying census tracts, what we could spend money on, you all could spend money on, would be broader. However, the county does not have any qualifying census tracts, and so that kind of limits to some degree what you all can fund. And we also, fortunately, have not experienced a qualifying revenue loss. So a lot of the towns and cities in the state have experienced a pretty substantial revenue loss, but generally the counties in our area and cities called many of them, and I've talked to them in some of our joint meetings, and many of the counties in this area have been really fortunate to not have the revenue losses that some other places had, which is good, but it also means that funding option is not available to the county. And so what we put on there is the questions should go to me, and then the general questions we would, assuming you want to go forward with this format, would be placed, a question, not who they were from, but a generalized version of the question, and the answer would be placed in frequently asked questions on the website. So everybody could see those responses. So that's what we've written up on that. And I would love to hear any comments you have, or if you want to send me some thoughts after you have a chance to read through it a little more. The other things I might take a moment to mention to you related to this is, so we have temporary guidance, as you all know, and but we get updates on what is allowed and potentially not allowed on a pretty regular basis. And so many of our surrounding areas have kind of decided that they might fund some of the things sooner that are clearly well within the parameters, and then maybe put some aside until we get the final rule, potentially the 1st of October, to really know exactly what all could be funded. So that is a possibility. We also, as I mentioned, only have half the money in hand. The other half would come later. So that's the other limiting factor. And with that, I don't know, Steve, if there's anything else I need to add from you all's reading of anything.
I don't think so. I mean, to the extent that you can, a prudent approach is to hit the things that are pretty clearly going to qualify, and maybe take wait and see as far as things that are less settled. So
a suggestion might be for you to We would probably want to give folks, since these are, some extent, for some folks will be some extensive questions, might want to give them maybe about a month or so to respond. And then, start going through your process, and by that time we might have a little more guidance, and you might want to, as part of your process, think about in your public hearing, going through some of these things, and maybe by then we'll have a little more guidance, but obviously it's up to you. We just want to help you follow the law and distribute the funds however you feel is most appropriate for the county within the law.
Yeah, I would just simply say I appreciate the process that you formed here, because I think it does help us track what's happening a little better than what we've done in the past. I think this is a really positive thing, and I would like to see maybe 6 weeks or a month, 2 months, have it open long enough that, I think one thing that happened maybe is there a few people didn't hear about it, and, or maybe trying to do some outreach, whenever that date is, but, especially with fire and rescue, I think, like the volunteer system, making sure they know about the process, maybe making sure you send it to their captain or president or whatever the appropriate people would be, so that they know the process if they would qualify. I don't know if they qualify for any funds, but I would want our first responders to have a good opportunity there if they're possible. But really do appreciate the process you've laid out, because I think it'll make it a lot clearer. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Outstanding.
I agree with everything Lauren said. You put some time into this, and I think we can track it better. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if it's proper time or not, but as far as projects that various may qualify, I know labor and materials would qualify. What about as far as engineering or design? Would those costs be separated out? Or have y'all got any guidance on that yet?
I have not seen anything yet that suggests that, for instance, if there was a water, sewer, or broadband project, that the full cost wouldn't be eligible.
Okay. My second question, and this is going back up to the top, under number 4, it says, talks about specifically stormwater infrastructure. Would the work that needs to be done as far as retention bonds in the Commerce Park qualify under that one?
Mr. Booth, I haven't specifically looked at the retention ponds. We haven't, mostly it speaks to things about water related to public health. So I think that's been clean drinking water investment and wastewater and stormwater infrastructure. So I'm not saying it wouldn't be, but I think where we at least have been doing more research has been more around possibility of things that assist with clean water.
Well, I was just thinking that's one thing that we are looking at, and it is going to cost the taxpayers of the county a lot of money, and if it did qualify, I just think we should consider it.
Sure.
But that's just a suggestion.
I think that's.
And I would assume the EDA would have to fill out one of these forms for that.
Right.
Certainly worth looking into. I can't close the door on that. I would probably lean the other direction if it might need to test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good idea, Jared.
Yeah, it's economic resiliency. I mean, that might be how to look at it.
Well, and I apologize, my voice is going, which may make a lot of people happy, I don't know, but it's just food for thought.
All right. Well, we will specifically look for guidance around that and ask any questions we need to.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also make a few comments. I think that this guidance, this grant application is amazing. I think that you and your leadership team have put a lot of time into this. This is very well written. easily explained. I know it's not in the format for going out yet, I realize that, but I am very impressed with how people in our county will now be able to look at this, and it's gonna make our job, and how we go about spending this critical, money, a lot easier, and have a, for lack of a better term, a paper trail. Just knowing that we've got all this and it's down on paper is so important. And I just want to say thank you so much for all of this time and work by you and your staff, Dr. Millsap. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, we will look at maybe, to Mr. Yoder's question, maybe look at rolling this out in the next, for about a 6-week window. And of course, if you want it to be longer than that, when we see we had it 6 weeks, and we can do that as well. That's your call.
See what kind of response we get.
Sure.
Yeah. I wonder if we can look at it in a month and just, a month from when it's released and see the kind of responses you're getting from what entities you're getting them from. And that might help to Supervisor Yoder's point, see if we're missing people.
Well, one of the things, I guess, the reason I brought that up was some of these organizations have monthly meetings, so it may go out and then they have a meeting and then they discuss if they might apply for something. The process may take them longer than a month to get that done.
Yes. That certainly, we can certainly do that. And I would say there is still a fair amount of disagreement about what might be allowed towards the edges of this.
Yeah.
I have also heard from some other jurisdictions some pretty broad ideas, but they are particularly related to those qualifying census tracts, which again, you do get a little bit more latitude, but so we'll be looking to see what kind of response some of those ideas get from some of the legal and federal officials, and kind of let you know about that as well, because that's not entirely clear. So.
Right.
Okay.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Durbin and his team at Sands Anderson for their help. I know they've been instrumental in going through all these documents. So kudos to you, Steve, and your team there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I guess we could take some applicants and hold them and see if we get further direction. Is that a possibility rather than rejecting? Or is that
I think
right, I mean, there may be some that are kind of questionable and you say, all right, well, we'll take these under advisement and see what happens.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only challenge with that might be the timeline, so we might have to give folks a little latitude to either just say month 1, month 3, or the ability to shift their timeline based on when they get their funding. I would think that would be the only challenge.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that. All right. Anything else? All right. The next item I have on here is Police Training Academy Charter. Sheriff Craig and I went on Thursday morning to a meeting of the Police Training Academy folks. They are a very entertaining group, I will tell you that. And they have issued a new charter. There's been a few changes from the previous charter, but most of it is that Montgomery County is no longer part of the Police Training Academy, and because of that, they need a new charter. One of the other changes is they have asked, in addition to the sheriff signing, that the county administrator or town manager sign. So I went and signed that on y'all's behalf. So I want to let you know about that.
And, I don't know if this pertains to this. I don't know if Justin engaged or not, but Major Furl was seeing, had a thing on Facebook where that, I think it's New River Valley, or one of them was going to offer a college course.
Yes.
Where they could get their DS in law enforcement, through the academy.
Yes, I believe that's correct, Mr. Chairman, and I think in the discussion that day, while of course the sheriff could answer these better than myself, there's clearly an emphasis on trying to make sure all of our law enforcement folks have as much training and as high quality training as possible. And there are a couple of places, and again, he could answer better than me, but where they feel that they're offering better training than what the state is going to be offering. So they're basically asking the state to let them keep to the higher quality that they're doing. So that speaks well to the academy and all the folks that teach there, which are pretty, for the most part, law enforcement individuals from this region. So that speaks well to them. The next thing on the agenda, I just wanted to mention to you all, we have made a staff change. As you know, Kevin Sowers has been serving as our emergency management coordinator for some time. And recently, I've asked Kevin about becoming our public safety director and put an announcement out when we did that, of course, to the constitutional officers and other folks. So that expands Kevin's roles. He continues to have all of his emergency management coordinator duties, but his duties related to liaison to other groups has been expanded. And he also is officially over our cybersecurity work and our EMS department. So wanted to make sure, give Kevin our kudos about that. And maybe hope that he can get some sleep someday, although I don't see that anytime in the future, because that's a big job. But he is in my short period of time, many of the staff has impressed me, and Kevin is certainly one of those. His work ethic's been really, really terrific, and I appreciate it. The last formal item.
I'm sorry, could I ask a quick question about that? I'm just wondering if we need to update our emergency plan to reflect that at some point. I don't know if that's something, I think that's something the board adopts, isn't it? Just a thought, I happen to think of sitting here.
Thank you. All right, thank you for that. I will put that on my to-do list to bring to you all in the future, so thank you. I had a couple other quick things I was going to mention, but the last thing I have officially on the agenda is draft budget schedule. I was a little reluctant to send this to you all because it did not have the opportunity to have as much scrutiny as the grant, so it is very, very draft. I wrote it literally right before we came in here because my day went a little different than I thought. But wanted to give you kind of some perspective. Let Mr. Coleman give it to you. And of course, Cindy hasn't even seen this, so she might tell me this is crazy, and she'll also say, but it's no problem.
Thank you for emailing.
You're welcome, man. This is out for comment, so feel free to give me comments now or send something later. But I am very aware that my arrival on March 1 really backed you all into a corner this year. And you all did a yeoman's job of getting your budget together timely. And of course, a ton of thanks to Cindy in particular for making that happen. Because she got to do it while she was doing both jobs. And I think she did just an amazing amount of work in that period of time. So what I've laid out before you is maybe starting the process a little bit earlier in terms of starting to actually talk about things in September, which is kind of showing you an overview. See, she's already shaking her head no. But start looking in late September, October about where we are.
Actually, we always have to do that the first meeting in August.
Okay, so I'm going to fix that.
It's actually earlier because next meeting I'm going to have to come to you with the carryover request and the transfer so I can do the fiscal year end close so that we can roll over into fiscal year 22. So that's always as early in August as we can make it because right on the heels of that the auditors come.
Yes, and thank you for that, Cindy. And I probably need to clarify too, so I need to add that in August, but in September that I'd put together more of a formal presentation of where we are after all that happened. So to lay out like a formal PowerPoint that says this is where we are.
Good.
But Cindy is correct, that other needs to happen in August, so thank you for that addition. And then you'll see we'll start looking at in October give you an update where we are, major equipment and capital investment, kind of a status update since you all have made these big investments. How are we doing on moving those projects forward? And then the budget amendment potential there that's listed for October-ish is related to those ARPA funds. So once you start deciding where you're going to spend that $3.1 million, we'll need to do a budget amendment, and eventually there needs to be a public hearing about that, which was of course mentioned in the grant. And then in December-ish, you'll have year-end financial results, acceptance of the audit, all those kind of things, and then start moving January and all those things with the target of adoption of the final budget with the public hearing in May. So hopefully we'll keep to that. And then of course you all will have to, as we move forward, vote on a formal calendar. We just wanted to kind of alert you we were thinking that direction and get your sense of if you were good with starting a little bit earlier.
Excellent work.
Okay, thank you.
Anything you can do to get this done before Hasties?
Yeah, just if I need a reminder, look around about where we are, right? A couple other really quick items I just wanted to bring to your attention about some staff work. As you all know, you approved us to continue to do work on Renew the New/Little, as Mr. Booth suggested we request it. We name it. And so we have started work on that full force, and we have a very nice little spreadsheet of all of our tasks and what all we're supposed to do. So Renew the New will be August 28th, and it'll be at the same location, of course, starting out at On the Water. And we will be, Tabitha has already done great work, and so tomorrow the registration form will be out on the website for folks to sign up. For Renew the New. She's done that today while she's also done about 80 other things, so thank you, Tabitha. And then, of course, what we'll be doing is if folks have their own kayaks and things, they can bring them. Otherwise, On the Water will be providing some of that, which is really great on their half. They're just an amazing partner in this. And we'll have lunch for the volunteers, assuming you registered and all of that. And we'll go down the river, see what we find, and then that'll be followed by the chamber race event. So we're doing joint permitting, so my VDOT permit request is sitting right here. So we're trying to move that forward. If you all have any questions on that. You all put a little bit less money in the budget for this than you did in previous years, but your staff being your staff turns out to have pulled a lot of things out of the closet that now we don't have to buy. So that'll help quite a bit. So that was a good move on y'all's part. We went ahead and submitted at 6 o'clock tonight a letter of intent related to a VATI grant for broadband. It is not committing us to even apply for the funding, but it does leave the door open for us to have a discussion about additional broadband funding. And so as we go forward, we'll discuss that with you a little bit more, but wanted to make sure you were aware that we have left that door open by sending the letter today. Okay, and then thank you, ma'am. And then we also assigned yesterday the final grant for the $150,000 of cybersecurity grant. You will recall that funding was applied for. Kevin Sowers wrote that grant some time ago, and it got held up due to COVID and some other things, and they're finally releasing those funds. And so we'll go back and start implementing that, but that funding should be available shortly. And the final thing I wanted to mention about staff activities is just if you didn't realize there was a lot of building going on in the county, I can tell you building permits are up 47% over this time last year.
Oh.
So, now you know why it is that Mark said, well, he said he was taking a vacation, but he's actually doing a mission trip overseas. He'll be back next week. And thanks to everyone in the community for understanding and giving him a week off from doing that. We appreciate everyone who's been kind enough to understand that their inspections are getting pushed off a week. So thank you.
That increase, he needed it.
He did.
His next week off.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He gets back to it.
Yeah.
So the cybersecurity grant, were we awarded that, or is it just the application process is reopened?
Yeah, I think we were awarded it before, and then we have had to, it's been sitting there waiting for us, but Homeland Security was holding on to it during COVID for reasons that were not entirely clear. And now it'll be released.
I was just curious, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure about
I wasn't really either. It was before my
Appreciate
time.
you.
I think that's where we are.
a lot of good things happening.
Yep, yep. Oh, and,
Yeah.
Ms. Ryan has one more thing she'd like to mention to you all.
And this is primarily for those of you who serve on the PSA. The auditors pointed out that we need to send anybody who received more than $5,000 in funding for capital equipment a agreement that they will follow the proper federal disposition of the equipment bought with the federal funds. So I'm going to be putting together something for Plenty to sign and the PSA to sign for all the truck, the freezer, and Plenty, the freezer, the truck, and some of the other equipment from PSA. So when they get that, if there's questions, I wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you.
I think it.
I have a couple things. Go ahead. I can't remember if I mentioned this to you or not, but at Station 3 Fire, the dumpsters that are there, one of them is right on the road. And it's really hard for people to pull out. See, I've got multiple calls from people that are having issues pulling out. And also from, I think, with more dumpsters being there, fire is having a hard time parking because there's not a lot of parking there. Because they can't park in front of the bay doors, and then, you know, there's grass and sometimes it's raining. So just wanted to throw that. One part of it was that one dumpster, if they could be moved to another spot or taken away, I don't know, just so people can see to get out. And the other part that I was wondering is, at some point, maybe this board considering maybe expanding some parking there, or doing something a little bit just to help the firemen out for some parking, maybe gravel or extend that pavement. I don't know, so maybe with, because I know it was bad before when I was taking my lifetime membership now. I think we added maybe a few more dumpsters when we changed some things around, and so it's just gotten even tighter down there. And one of them mentioned to me the other day that they went to a fire, and just because there were people putting trash in, there was just no place to park when they went to a fire. So anyway, kind of put a bug in everybody's ear as a possible site for our money that we budgeted this year. One thing that I thought of earlier when the trails were mentioned, when I was on the we'll say EDA, not EDA, Rec Authority. Yeah, right.
It gets worse.
It's a long day. I'm sitting in the sun all day on tractors. I'm pretty sure that when that trail was put in, the Partnership for Floyd agreed to do the maintenance on it. And I don't know how that would work now that the authority is no more and we've taken it over. But that may be something to research, if there's any paperwork to lead back to that. And I don't know as far as looking through that over there, but I thought the only reason that the Rec Authority agreed to build the trail was that they had someone in place to do the maintenance, because we didn't think we could do the maintenance on it. So, just a thought there.
If you no longer have an authority.
Yeah, but I think you're correct. And Steve, would that not necessarily transfer with as the authority transferred?
If there's an agreement in place, you're the successor to that authority, so arguably, I'd want to look at whatever terms of the agreement there might be, but
I can't remember if it was a signed agreement or if it was just a promise they made in a meeting. I just remember that was what tipped the edge, was, okay, we won't have to do the maintenance, so we'll agree to do it.
Right.
So, that may be something either to look for, or maybe talk to some other authority members, former authority members from that time, I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, I would think that if there's not a written agreement with guidelines, then I guess the responsibility falls on us if they decide they don't want to do it anymore.
Right. Yeah, just something for us to maybe look at. The last thing, after thinking about festivals this weekend, I had a couple things I thought maybe we should update our music festival ordinance on. And I didn't know the appropriate way to share my ideas, if it was to share them with our attorney and see what he thought first before, if it was even legal, that we could add. I don't know what's legal we can add into our, or if it should be brought before all of us and discussed. Just a question on how I should share who I should share my ideas with on a couple things.
So my policy is, if you need me, call me or email me. I think typically that those questions would flow to the county administrator, and then to me, and I'd be happy to look at any questions you might have from a legal perspective as sort of, can we do this? I think that's what you're.
Right.
That's the
I don't know that. Just a few things that I thought about.
Yeah.
I know we're limited on what we can require from a festival, but I had a few thoughts over some things, and I don't know if the board. I guess my question more was to the board if because it's a big topic, and I didn't want to go and kind of do my little thing over here, and then all of a sudden all y'all say, well, we didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree. I have some things that I've been contemplating, so I'm very much hoping to think we do need to. And from my perspective, I wasn't sitting in the seat when that originated, so I would like maybe some clarification of what that spectrum looks like, what local governing body can do, cannot do, all across the board. And it may answer some of my questions initially, because again, I wasn't sitting here when that was put out. I think that came right before I got on the board, maybe 2 years before, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Klinger was there when it was chair when that happened.
Yeah, so so I'm very much open to it and have some things I would like to discuss as well. That answers your question.
You went all the way back to virtual too.
No, Linda was we had a committee, and it was Linda and I and the county administrator that we,
On the music.
on the music festivals. And then we took input from a number of people, including the sheriff and the emergency coordinator, and we allowed each existing festival in the county to come in and make comments. And I think the structure there is good. I think it's good that we have I'm not saying I want to do away with the ordinance. I'm just saying I think it might be time to reevaluate and make a few tweaks. So I think that we could. Because I think the reason we did that to begin with was not necessarily to block. I don't know if we can block someone from coming, but it's to provide emergency services and solid waste, all the services that our citizens enjoy. We don't want to have a week long where we can't provide them because something comes into the county and soaks up those resources. So, and some of that's roads. I mean, roads are trying to keep traffic at a reasonable rate, that type of thing. And I thought it might be a good time to reevaluate a little bit. So but I also didn't want to say, let's spend 3 hours on it here if nobody else is doing this.
Something that I know I've expressed a couple different times individually, not to the board like you have just now. So it's something if our agendas would allow, I'd like to start working on while I'm here. If I could be totally selfish.
I mean, I think your background would be really good to add some input. I mean, I think it's something we probably should work on in the near future.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just recess. I mean, that's a prudent thing to do from time to time.
You get more information as time goes along. It's been 4 years.
Well, the county structure's changed a lot in the way of core services or emergency services. It's changed a lot. And just
And festivals within the county has grown quite a bit since then, and for the most part, I think it's been a positive thing.
Yeah.
I think that, without going down the list of all of them in the county, I think they've,
I was picking up a lot of interference, so I didn't hear a lot of what was said, but I think maybe we should review the ordinance and then, if each of us have suggestions, either we can share them with the county administrator and then she can share them with the rest of the board. Would that be a way to handle it?
it's fine, or put it on the agenda,
Yeah.
for the discussion at some point.
I think a discussion group would be great, like, you know, utilize an Outlook even.
And before you discuss it, if y'all want to, if there's an email or a list of sort of topics, or, you know, can we change this, can we address that? I'd be happy to look at that before you have an agenda discussion, if you want to sort of filter it through a legal perspective first.
Maybe that would work good, is to start with an email version of the next update ordinance, and you can call me, see what happens. I don't know.
I'm only picking up that other word for some reason. Was it suggested to put it on the agenda to discuss?
Can you hear me okay, Jerry?
I got you now, yeah, you came in loud and clear there.
I'm laying a little closer. Now, the suggestion was that, that we all be emailed the latest version of the ordinance, and that then we can, if there are changes that we want to ask Steve about, we could ask Steve, or send them to Dr. Millsap, and she could send them to Steve, and then after that, have it on the agenda. That way Steve would know what our questions were beforehand, so he'd be prepared.
That sounds good.
We'll go ahead and share them and get them out, get the current ordinance out to you all.
All right. Board member?
I have a couple of things. One, the green box light at Indian Valley looks really, really nice. Very, very nice. Very nice. A long time coming. I may wonder,
Kept up very well as well.
yes,
The folks that live out there are doing their part.
they are. It's going very, very good, so thank you for that. I can't remember. We may have to look at the agreement, at the maintenance aspect of it.
Okay.
We can look at that, maybe just to be sure, particularly the grass on the constructed part
Okay.
is growing exceptionally well. But I don't think that's something that it's tender stage that you want to put equipment on. And I can't remember on the agreement if that responsibility failed or if it was. Let's have a check and see.
Supervisor, just, you could take a meter out there and
But we're out losing we're looking for projects for the workers that, make it good as they,
As they start coming back.
yeah, sure. Maybe later towards the year, so we want to get that to grow really well. So, thanks.
You said, we won't weed it this year, but next year the supervisors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The only other thing I have is, in light of our public comments received and feedback that I've received from constituents, obviously in my district, and also having personal knowledge of the model policy sent around by the Department of Education. I am concerned, and I do think that there is a place for local government to make its claim, make its state as the local governing body. My concern, after having read personally the model policies more than once that was issued out, having spent a lot of conversation with my school board representative, even as of today, I feel like there is, in some instances, a place in a position for the local governing body to take a stand. I feel like this is one of those places, given just the audacity of this, and really taking into consideration our teachers And there is so much in there that has not even really been expounded upon of the extreme scrutiny that is going to befall our local teachers. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about how this process went through from General Assembly to the Department of Education and basically handed off to a non-governing body to establish these policies. I just think that this is potentially disastrous at its core, without, any support from anywhere, which we're used to that naturally from Richmond. No disrespect intended, but just how it falls. So, I've read this resolution and I think it's very, very, very well written. And it was said earlier, and I agree wholeheartedly. I know for me, and I trust that every person at this table legitimately cares about every human being. I believe we also have to take into account every human being and making sure that there's policies and procedures in place across the board that doesn't adversely affect others, and adversely affect the funding that we're sending to the local school board by way of teachers and the extra responsibilities and things it's put on them. My personal things that I've reduced from having read the policy personally as well as a parent. And having those things said, I would like to make a motion that this board adopt this resolution presented to the Floyd County Board of Supervisors regarding Virginia Department of Education model policies for the treatment of transgender students in Virginia public schools. This is also the one. This is also the one that I shared with each member electronically that I had received. I am not intended to try to introduce something that's contentious by nature, but I just feel like I can't sit in the position I am without making a statement and asking this board to consider making a statement like we've had with every other resolution. And I'm respectful of each one of you, your opinions, but I feel like this needs to be done. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my motion.
Before I ask for a second, I've asked Mr. Garrett to come give maybe some highlights on it, for the ones that
Where would you like me to say tonight?
just where they will stand at.
All right. Pull up the chair, if that's all right. So, Mr. Chairman, if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to address those. I don't want to go off on a tangent. First thing, I guess, maybe to push back a question to you all is this intended as a statement of the, just a statement of the board's views, or as a basis for further concrete legal action further down the road? Because I think the way the Constitution of Virginia structures the schools, it's very limited on what the role of the board of supervisors has for the internal policies of a school division. So as a political statement, that's one thing, but I don't want us to start going down a road where we're, I don't want to give you the impression that there are a lot of interventions that can happen legally by this board, because there are not. As well, I'm sorry.
One question on that. For legal action, it would have to come from the school board then? Is that, or from the Teachers Association or Parents Association? Is that?
So there is, you're talking about like a lawsuit?
Right.
There is pending lawsuits in the circuit court for the city of Lynchburg. Two combined cases are pending there challenging these model policies. Don't want to I don't know if I can handicap the legislation, but it's an uphill climb. Handicap the lawsuit. I think it's an uphill climb to show standing and the cause of action would prevail. But that is pending, and that is based on private groups, not a board of supervisors, not a local school board. I don't want to speak for the school board or the school board's attorney, because that's not my role. But I would question at this point whether there would be standing for a local school board to take legal action I just don't know if they would have standing against the state. I will, I guess, to take that as a bit of a segue onto the legal side, I will note that the resolution that you have reviewed previously, you received previously, that's largely based on what was adopted in Carroll County. That Carroll County resolution was adopted in early June. Since that time, there has been a change in the legal landscape. I think you're probably all familiar with the Gavin Grimm versus Gloucester County School Board case. That's a Fourth Circuit case out of Virginia that was on appeal to the United States Supreme Court, who just a couple weeks ago denied cert. They're not going to hear that case. They're going to let the Fourth Circuit's ruling stand. What that means, I was a bit surprised by that. I expected, frankly, that the 6-3 Supreme Court, conservative slant that it has now, would take up that issue, but they decided not to review that matter, so the Fourth Circuit ruling stands. And what that means is it appears that a policy based on biological sex of bathrooms or locker rooms or things of that nature, that could be problematic under equal protection under the United States Constitution. It could be problematic under Title IX. Again, that's not something that I think this board could take action on anyway, as far as any sort of binding legal action, but as far as a statement of your views, that's a different question. As I've said before, the school division is a separate governmental entity under our Constitution. The Board of Supervisors doesn't have much say in their internal policies. So again, as a binding directive to the school board, I don't think that's possible. With regard to the budget, the one thing that is different about the resolution that you have before you and the Carroll County resolution is that there's a provision about scrutinizing the budget, essentially. And that is a prerogative that the Board of Supervisors has, but that's largely a prerogative that I think you'll be exercising going forward in a later budget year, because this budget has been public hearing, has been held for the school, that budget has been adopted and appropriated, and there's very strong case law that says that once that appropriation is made, that is the school board's discretion on how to spend and allocate that money. Within the
categories that we've approved.
Yes, you're provided that the governing body makes a categorical appropriation. The school board then has discretion within those categories on how to spend.
If I may, before you jump to another topic on that, perhaps it is my fault I didn't include you in this email with the budget, or the particular resolution that I have, one that I've shared with the board. The last section under number 5 says the Board of Supervisors will only carefully consider. It's not my motion, the one that I'm reflecting, is only carefully considering any budgetary items.
Okay, I think I used the word scrutinize, carefully consider that.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. I'm not making a motion to insinuate that we retract any funding.
Yeah.
Or.
And
We carefully consider every budget that comes across this desk.
Certainly understand that, and that's absolutely valid.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
If I could just finish the thought, I didn't want to set up an expectation. I didn't want to set up an expectation that there was a lot of budgetary actions that you all could take in this budgetary year, and then be faced with the situation. Well, why didn't you tell me that before? So
I just want to make sure you understood what I was. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you.
What was your question, Jerry?
And I'll try and hold out. If I understood Steve correctly, he said this is based on the Carroll County one, but this is not identical. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And throughout this thing, is it fair to say that there has been interpretations placed in it?
I mean, I would say that the way that some of the topics have been characterized is not exactly the way I would characterize it.
Okay. And if I'm understanding the number 5 on the back of it, while they didn't come out and say it, it's basically saying that board supervisors will basically hold the budgetary considerations over the school board if they don't do what they think or whatever we think they should. Is that a fair interpretation of number 5? I'm sorry. I'm losing my voice.
I don't, other than saying it will carefully consider, I used the word scrutinize earlier, carefully consider every budgetary option. As far as what message that sends to the school board or public or any others, I think that's for you all to decide.
Well, I'm going to say, if I may, as chairman, if I may right now, while I still got a voice, it was referenced the 2A resolution and this one in the same comments. A couple of us were revising the 2A resolution up until just a few minutes prior to that meeting. And that was after it had been scrutinized what we were proposing by legal counsel. All due respect to Mr. Coleman, but I would think we should follow the same procedure. If the majority wants to send one, I have no problem sending one to the Department of Education. But I don't know that especially with that number 5 and the insinuation of it. In 15.5 years, I've never held the school education funding of our children over the school board head, and I'm not going to start now. And there's a few other things in it that I think need clarification. It states here that the board has reviewed the model policies. Has the entire board reviewed the model policies?
I can only speak for myself, and I have a copy. I'd be glad to share it with you.
I'm sorry, I did not hear a word of that. Can somebody repeat that?
Mr. Coleman said that he has.
Okay, he has. But I'm talking about for as far as the rest of us. Have all of us took it and read it?
Well, Mr. Booth, I'm not going to tell you what to read and what not to read. I believe that's a little bit on your part there. I'm just entering the motion here based off of, and that's why I sent this out, and it's been before everybody before. So, I can't speak to everybody reading it. That's on each one of us.
Mr. Booth, I was going to ask the same question because I have skimmed it, but I haven't read them in depth, and I was going to pass a resolution. I want to know exactly what that, and quite honestly, more importantly, I would want to be able to compare that to what the school board is considering passing. So
my understanding is Dr. Wheeler, if I understood Dr. Wheeler correctly, I don't know that they're planning to pass anything, that their policies have already been in place. They're not looking to change policies, are they? Or did I misinterpret what he said? But on page 2 of it, it talks about that model policies are required to be adopted the first day of the year. The guidance regarding implementation, compliance, and model policies will not be made available until the end of the calendar year. So how can you adopt policies? That just sounds strange, but
That's actually in the code. I mean, from what I understood,
I'm not opposed to us making a statement, but I don't know that I can make the statement that's been laid out in front of us.
in reference to the funding, this is no different. The Second Amendment, we struck the statement about withholding funding, and that was rightfully so. I would very much say that this has nothing to do with withholding funding. We carefully, again, as I've already stated, carefully consider every budget item. I take it to mean that in its entirety, we're going to carefully consider. But I understand that again that my motion and my intent of my motion is to make a political statement. Perhaps I should have better articulated that. It's not intended to overreach another board. It's just a statement of this board and this board only. As we have said since I've seated, these resolutions are non-binding. It's a statement. And that's the basis of my introduction of my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I didn't hear all that, but I heard something about a statement. I'm not above making a statement to the Department of Education and this group to that they need to be sure to take into consideration of all impact on all children and their rights. But I don't think this. I just don't think the way it's written right here is the way to do that. I'd rather have Steve come up with something or whatever than, I mean, just like I asked, apparently there's some interpretation leeways, and I think, Steve, you stated there a while ago, not necessarily your interpretation, but that's just where I stand on it. Then I'm gonna have to shut up a minute.
I stand by this motion. I stand by this resolution as a resolution introduced by the people.
Yeah.
By the people of Floyd County. I believe Mr. Durbin had any grave concerns about the legality of it or anything associated with that. I have full confidence in you to express that as a political statement. I don't hear you saying that there's any grave concerns of legality in nature.
I would say if you were asking me if I would wordsmith it, if I were the author of this, I would probably express some of these things differently. But as a political statement, it's not, it doesn't contain an action item. And with the caveat that to the extent that, next month we're going to be considering action items, I just want to make it clear that I don't think there's much action items that can be taken. The Fourth Circuit has spoken, and the Supreme Court has spoken,
Sure.
and the General Assembly has spoken. But as far as a resolution, it is a resolution. It is not imposing. It does not carry the force of law. It does not direct anyone to adopt a policy or repeal a policy. So, to the extent that it's an expression of the board's views on something, I don't have any other comments beyond that. I think it's the board's views.
Well, thank you.
Before I go on with the second, I guess it's hard for no effort to change your spots, and I'm old fashioned, and it's no reflection on anybody and their beliefs, but I look at the bigger picture that we're putting the fox in the hen house. Because speaking with 32 years of experience in law enforcement, and actually interviewing a 4-year-old girl that was raped, I know there's perverts out there that will use this to get closer to our kids. I've got 4 granddaughters coming in elementary school. 2 6-year-olds, a 9-year-old, and 11-year-old. My oldest granddaughter teaches in Carroll County. Me and her have a lot of discussion on what's going on. She's actually considering quitting teaching because of this. Because she's had 2 miscarriages. She wants a baby so bad. And she knows what this is going to open up. Because I've always taught my kids, where there's an action, there's a reaction. There's already been 2 instances that I know of, not this state, but adjoining states. One, and most of you watched the news and seen it, a male that called himself female walked through the women's sauna with little girls present, completely naked. Another one, a 16-year-old girl walked through men's locker room, men's bathroom, topless. Men being men, you know there's going to be some of them that grabbed their cell phone and made pictures. If they show them pictures to anyone, then they can be charged with possession of child pornography. So you got a big snowball coming, yeah. And, you know, it just worries me. It really does. And there's going to be people hurt, because I know what's going to happen with some of these people that they see a man follow their little girl in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's going to be disaster. So with that, to make a political statement, I would second Mr. Coleman's motion.
Under discussion, I guess I'd say, one of my major problems with this is that it wasn't on our agenda. So, because up to this point, we haven't brought it up, it hasn't been discussed among board members, other than a proposal coming to us. But, I haven't reviewed this versus the model policies. And so I have no idea if that is what my interpretation would be or not. And it clearly states in here that we have done that. And so that's really one of my major problems with this, is that if I voted for this, I'm essentially lying. And I'm not against making a statement, but I'm not going to vote for something that we haven't reviewed when it clearly says we have reviewed it. So that's kind of my position on this right now.
But it was presented to us at our last meeting.
I understand that, but if we had it on the agenda, and I knew that, I got this when I was at work today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, to really read this even in depth, much less compared to model policies. So I don't really know what my position is, to be honest with
I don't have anything else worthwhile to say.
It's good, Vito, you have any comments?
Not at this time.
A motion and a second, so, she can call the roll.
On the resolution, Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Turman,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
you. Abstain.
Ms. Cookenbook,
Abstain.
and Mr. Booth.
Jerry?
Mr. Booth?
Sorry, I don't,
Thank you.
sorry, Mr. Booth.
I thought maybe you couldn't hear us.
I'm gonna have to vote no. So, I got a question for legal counsel. What does that do for it? To pass on the two, you got 2 yeses, 2 abstains, and 1 no.
You have, the critical number, you need a majority of 3. You have 3 voting, you have 2 voting in favor, 1 against, the motion passes. Abstentions do not count.
Can I ask, just on the actual, if you had 3 abstentions and 2 votes, it really didn't matter what Mr. Booth voted at that point then. I'm not asking about this in particular, I'm just thinking in the future.
Yeah, as long as you have a quorum to do business, abstentions reduce the,
Okay.
I think think that it's been the practice, in some boards of having abstentions count as no votes, but that is, that's not consistent with Robert's rules.
I know this is probably on the tail end of things, but I have thought about this, and I recently, maybe the board could adopt a policy that anytime a group or a body wants to present or express a resolution, that there could be a period of time on the agenda, because in my almost 4 years, we've done it on the agenda, not on the agenda. A board member bring it up as I did tonight at board member time. It's been done any number of ways since I've been here, and I've seen it before I got elected on the board when I was sitting here 6 months prior to get a feel for things. So maybe, and I know that's not anything binding, it would go from board to board, but maybe as a matter of policy, this board would consider and authorizing the county administrator or her designee to anybody that has a resolution, they can by all means, express that. And it would be adequately, I try to share them, with you guys, so it's fair and everybody has notice. But then there can be some time for each party to talk, and they can have a scheduled time, and they can articulate what they want to express, and there can be the copies present, and everybody's well informed. Because one thing I do hate is when people come, when they speak in public comment, and they think they want to see action. They're here to see their local government body take action. And, that's the reason, one of the reasons that I made the decision to bring that up tonight under board member time. So I think it may serve everybody well as a matter of policy to, we allow people to have time on the agenda.
I'd like to say something as the one who kind of puts the agenda,
Just a thought.
is the person who puts the agenda together. We have always, you're right, they've come up in all sorts of ways, but we have always stated that if anybody wants to be on the agenda, all they have to do is contact me, it's usually me, and request to be on the agenda, state what the topic is and how long you want to be on it. And once you do that, I ask if you have anything you want included in the board packet, and I give you a time and day that it needs to be to me, and it goes out to the board. And we have done that consistently ever since I've been here, and many of you in this room have done exactly that and have presented resolutions or information beforehand, requested time on the agenda, and got on it. So while people can do it the way it was done tonight, you saw also Mr. Branscombe and Mr. Zeman had done that process where they had requested time on the agenda, provided the resolution in advance, to give our board a chance to review it and ask questions and consider it before they came to vote.
Yeah, sure. And there's always that potential for any constituent to reach out to a board member. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways.
I think that's good. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Oh, Mr. Yoder, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Durbin, can I have a matter of clarification? I didn't particularly understand when you said the abstention didn't count as a no because there was a quorum. Can you explain that to me again so I understand it? Because I have abstained before and it counted as a no. I agree with Mr. Yoder that I had not had enough time to do all of the research stated in that resolution to feel comfortable voting. And is it because two of us are remote that our abstentions allow this to pass? I didn't understand that, Mr. Durbin. Can you explain that?
No, it's that an abstention is by definition not a vote, and if that has been interpreted in the past that an abstention counts as a no vote on anything but a budgetary matter or an expenditure, then that's just simply not correct. An abstention is not a vote. As long as there's a quorum to do business, business is done by a majority of those present and voting.
So because there are only 3 there, 2 allowed this to pass. Is that correct?
No, it's because there's only 3 votes that were cast.
Because, yeah, there are only 3 votes on it. You and I did not vote.
So abstentions are not votes.
Got it.
That's
And
why I
so-
said it didn't matter what Jerry voted because it was already passed at that point.
Yes.
Well,
And
I want to say that I am, at this point, I feel, I guess there's no way to change my vote, but I am not I feel like, as you stated earlier, that I did not read everything. I am not as knowledgeable on this as I feel I should be to pass this. So I just want that in the record. And that I would at this point want to vote no. And that can be put in the record. Whether I can do it or not, I get it, but I want that in the record.
In that situation, you know, that a motion to lay on the table or a motion to consider at a later time is always in order when there is a motion pending and seconded, or made and seconded.
But not after it's voted on.
Now, after it's voted on, no, there would be, the board could have a motion to rescind a prior action.
But that would have to be made by one of those in the majority, wouldn't it?
I think you're talking about a motion to reconsider. I think that a board can revisit a policy by majority.
And a resolution at that point can be brought up. We can bring up another resolution next month. It's not.
Yeah.
This is a statement of what happened at 10 o'clock tonight. At 10:05, we can bring up another resolution. I mean, it's.
Voted on it. It's not
I
about
can keep bringing them up.
That's right. Every week.
That's correct. I think we had some experience with this
Yeah.
in years past of motions that have been made and then overridden, and then or resolutions that have been made and overridden and then
Rewrote.
re-overridden.
And recalled and revoted.
But that's,
In my view, it's a statement of where the board was at right then.
And
The members, the majority of the voting members at that time felt that was necessary. There's 2 members that didn't feel like they had enough time. 1 member didn't approve of it. That's where we're at. And that was at 10 o'clock at midnight. We may have read enough that one of us wanted to vote. That's where we're at, 10 o'clock. So.
I think that's accurate.
Nobody has anything else up. If the floor is open, make a motion to adjourn.
Nice motion.
Adjourn is always in order.
Motion.
Alright. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Ms. Cookenbook.
Yes.
Alright, Mr. Booth.
Yeah.